We could have a drum roll for the startling statistic. Welcome. Welcome to Civility Matters, the podcast that seeks to answer the question, why you gotta be so rude? But more importantly, what are you gonna do about it? I'm your host, John O'Brien, author of the book Rudeness Rehab, Reclaiming Civility in the Workplace and Your Home Space. And I couldn't be more thrilled than I am today to be starting this podcast and to be welcoming the guests that I'll be welcoming, which I will do in just a moment. As I travel around the country and speak to groups, I often hear from people that they are concerned about the amount of rudeness and incivility in our society. But sometimes people say, John, is it really that bad? So, in each of these episodes, I'm going to be offering a startling statistic. So, I'd like to offer a startling statistic. I don't know if we have a drum roll available to offer this startling statistic, but here is this month's startling statistic. According to the Society of HR Management, incivility is costing businesses over $2 billion with a B, $2 billion per day due to things like absenteeism, lost productivity, and quiet quitting. So how are we going to turn the tide? Well, friends, it's through education and through Civility Matters, the podcast that seeks to target that. So now each month, I'm going to be joined by a thought leader with an expertise related to civility and the topic of civility. And I could not be more excited than to be welcoming the guest I'm having here today, Dr. Rob Fazio. And let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Fazio. With a kind and clear advising style, Dr. Rob Fazio is known for his candor and warmth. He's able to connect with people where they are and challenge them to get them to where they want to go. He places a premium on balancing behavior change with business outcomes. He's a turnaround expert and often called upon to tackle the thorniest organizational challenges and advise tough-minded alpha executives and elite talent, such as CEOs, surgeons, litigators, and wealth managers. He's developed the motivational currency calculator that we'll talk about, a self-assessment that helps people understand their own and their colleagues' motivators and how to tap into that to facilitate improved communication and heightened collaboration. He's a recognized expert in intentional leadership and protecting oneself and others from dysfunctional behavior. He's penned 2 books, Simple is the New Smart, and the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Bullyproof, Using Subtle Strengths to Influence Alphas and Strengthen Society. This is a plug for the book. His strategies have been featured in outlets including CNBC, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, and his thought leadership has appeared online and in print within publications including Success Magazine, the New York Times, Forbes, and CEO Magazine. He's also the founder and president of the nonprofit Hold the Door for Others that equips and challenges people to grow through loss, trauma, and adversity. What I'd love to give a warm Civility Matters welcome with our large studio audience to Dr. Rob Fazio.
Thanks for thank you for having me, John. I can't see John right now, but that was an incredible welcome that I appreciate. We'll wait to see if he hops on here in a moment. I see the live button, so that must mean that you're seeing me. And I've been an admirer of John's work for a long time now. And here he is.
I decided I was going to hide and I thought this was a bit of a stress-inducing situation, Dr. Fazio, to see how you handled it, and you did so well.
Yeah, I knew I had to keep civil. That's all I keep reminding myself.
So listen, there's lots that I want to talk about in the time that we have today, but I'm really would like to start by just having you talk a little bit about that nonprofit that you started and the roots of that.
Sure. I guess we start in the most important place. So, the nonprofit is near and dear to my heart, and the history of it and how it started was my dad was an executive in New York City for years, and he was in the World Trade Center on September 11th, and he was last seen holding a door to help people to get out. So when they were saying on the loudspeakers and everything, the PA systems, to go back to work, to go home. He was really leading the charge and making sure people left the towers. And unfortunately, he didn't make it home to us and his family and loved ones, and we never found him. But what we did find was an inspiration to really help people help themselves. And our whole philosophy is that coping is not enough when trauma or crisis happens. We like to teach people how to grow through their adversity or loss or trauma. And it's been a great lesson for me the way my dad lived his life and his kindness. He worked for some dysfunctional bosses, and I think that's what brought me to doing the leadership work that I do today.
Wow, that's amazing. An amazing story, and an amazing story of trying to make the kind of the some resilience out of something traumatic. So,
Yes,
so yeah. So if you have maybe at the end of the show, we'll make sure that we put a link somewhere to this nonprofit because I think it's amazing work that you're doing.
that'd be wonderful. The 25th
Yeah,
anniversary is coming up, so there'll be a lot going on.
yeah, cool. Okay, so before we get to the serious stuff, well, that was serious, I guess, but we're taking a break from serious stuff. How about you share one fun fact about yourself that others might not know, Dr. Fazio?
The fact I really enjoy having fun and telling jokes. So I have two daughters, 9 and 5. Talk about alphas; they're already Sicilian, full fledged. And so we many evenings we will share jokes, and we'll buy each other kind of little joke books. But the fun part of it is they've gotten much better at it than I am. And we measure success on like how many people you can make laugh, and right now they're winning.
Well, I think I trust you that you will work on your stuff. You're always a hard worker. You work on your stuff to
Yes.
give them a good run for their money, right?
Yeah, I think
Uh,
the audience is the problem, John. I just got to change the audience.
that's right. So you talked about your dad's experience with difficult bosses, and that's likely one of the reasons that you went into the field. But maybe just talk a little bit about what brought you to the work that you do, and a little bit also about what brought you to write the book on bullies.
Yeah. So it really is interesting. And as you know, when you write a book, everyone wants to know the why and your story. And, upon reflecting, I didn't know it at the time, but I really became a student of bullying in the workplace, dysfunctional behavior. And, like I said, my dad worked for some difficult people. So, commuting 2 hours a day from northern New Jersey to New York City, when he would come home, he didn't complain. My mom did, but we could tell that something always was a little bit stressful, for him. And over the years, we realized he worked for probably a narcissistic, dysfunctional boss, CFO that was a bully. And I think I thought to myself over the years, it shouldn't have to be this way. I knew my dad was a good, kind man, and he shouldn't have to feel powerless. So I became obsessed with trying to help people in a socially appropriate way to gain power and to marginalize, or I would say diffuse, the people that abused power. So,
Hmm.
I kind of think it as like trying to be the Robin Hood of power in the workplace.
Aha! I like that. I like that being the Robin Hood of power in the workplace and distributing it to those without it. So you tell us then more specifically about the book, Bullyproof, which I think is
Yes.
a wonderful book, and about the distinction I think you make. And correct me, see if I'm correct on this. That um, all bullies are alphas, but not all alphas are bullies. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Um, So the reason I wrote the book is not by design, but I started doing a lot of work with really strong personalities. So as you know, John, as you mentioned, surgeons or bankers, think of the people that are top of their game, but have these really strong personalities and are dominant. And when I was advising them or in coaching them, I was having a good amount of success, and people kept asking, how come you're like this alpha whisperer? How do you do this? So I decided that I decided to start tracking kind of my formula and my process, and that became the source of the book around, how do you influence these strong personalities, and that got pulled into this either situation where you're matching dominance with dominance, or just as bad, you're matching their dominance with submissiveness. And I knew there was a way to play in the in between basis. And so, yes, your mention of all bullies are alphas, but not all alphas are bullies, is really important, because we need alpha personalities and people that have the willingness to lead and take charge and innovate and not be fearful of what everyone thinks. So bullies are very important. It's just that we want bullies that are aware and can be adaptive and look out for others. So that's the differentiation there.
Aha. Okay. So in other words, that um, you're right, I think, and certainly I've seen that in my work too, that, we need the people who are more bold, who are going to be
Yes.
willing to sort of take charge and organize people, and that people will follow. But it's the question about how they do it, the strategies they use to do it, that sometimes matter, and how they deal with their frustration when it comes up. Right.
Yeah, and also, how balanced they are in what they're trying to accomplish. So, a quote unquote bully is just self-absorbed. But when someone has value-based power, where they're thinking about their ambitions, other people's ambitions, the organization's ambitions, society and community, when you have that balance and you're a driver and such, it's more pro-social as opposed to just self-absorbed.
Okay. Okay. Um, Now, the way that you think about bullying, I've always thought about it as something that is done intentionally. That's the definition I've always heard, is that bullies are intentional in terms of using their power to intimidate people or get them to do something. Is that the way that you think about it?
I've evolved my thinking around bullying. One, because I want to take the power away from the word bullying and try to pull people outside of falling into a victim place where um, everything is happening to them. So I think both intention and impact matter, but what matters the most is the actual impact. And I'll give you a quick example. So in working, downtown New York with finance professionals, you will come across a lot of people that are alphas and that are drivers. And in meetings and in conversations, they will take over to get to a result. And if you really spend some time with these people, they actually think they're doing other people a favor because they don't have the answers or they're moving too slowly. But the impact is they're actually hurting those people because they're taking away their knowledge. They may be beating them down or making them feel like they're not valued. So the intention is to get to the result, but the impact is just as bad as a bullying instinct when it is intentional.
Aha. So it's, again, as you're saying, the intent is just to sort of move the discussion along, and
Yes.
thinking that this first person thinking he or she's being helpful, but when in fact the way it's received is like things are being forced on the group, or that they have to go along with what this person has said.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly the worst case scenarios are when someone knowingly is trying to intimidate just to get what they need or want.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's similar to what I've heard a distinction made between rudeness and incivility, that some people say rudeness is intentional, that if you're being
Okay.
rude, you're doing that intentionally, versus incivility, it isn't intentional. But I actually don't agree with that,
Uh,
because I think
yeah.
people can still, their behavior can still be rude, even
Yeah.
if they aren't intending it. So I think it's a good distinction to be making, like that you did, the idea of okay, what do people intend versus
Yeah.
what's the effect of behavior.
Yeah. I like it. I
Um,
like it. Redefining civility. I like
yeah, so look at that. Look at us rewriting things. You're redefining bullying. I'm
it.
redefining civility. Um, what's been your experience of incivility in workplaces and the impact that it has?
Fortunately, it's incredibly common. And, the type of clients that I work in, oftentimes incivility takes a second seat to performance. So if someone is a high performer or connected to the business, brings in a lot of revenue, oftentimes people are fearful of taking it on, or they just kind of say, oh, that's just the way that they lead or just the way that they act. But we know the damage is much greater than the actual performance or revenue that they're bringing in.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well. The idea is this person is such a valuable individual contributor that we'll just, everybody kind of just has to tiptoe around these other behaviors or treat them in a way that so that they won't get into those negative stress related behaviors, but will still perform. But often they still do.
Yes, absolutely. And so, what we know about behavior is if it goes unchecked, it almost reinforces it, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
The message to the bully is keep doing what you're doing, bring in the money, and the message to everyone else is you don't matter as much.
Yeah. So you mentioned that kind of what we're talking about here, the individual contributor, and how their behavior can sometimes get ignored or whatever. Are there other ways that you see incivility impacting leadership or workplace culture?
I I think there can be a lack of kindness, which is a form of incivility, and this might sometimes be unintentional, but we're all under a lot of pressure between families, parents, children, friends, and then we have our work. And that stress and that pressure cooker often magnifies what you're feeling or experiencing. And so I think there's a lot of lashing out. There's a lot of shortness, right? Because it's must complete task or like I'm under this pressure. So you're going to feel that pressure as well. I think that happens quite a bit.
Yeah. So in other words, spillover. Um,
Yes. Yes.
People's stress-related negative behaviors kind of emerge. The more stress they get, the more likely they are to spill over,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yes.
Except for us, right? You and I, we
Right.
don't have any stress-related negative behaviors.
Well, clearly you have to be perfect to be on this podcast, but yeah.
Absolutely, right. Yeah. And part of the Mutual Admiration Society, apparently,
Yeah,
too.
right.
Um, so, um, you mentioned, or I mentioned in the intro about you, this motivational currency calculator and the model. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this came from working with a client that really wanted to find ways to appreciate differences in what motivates or drives people. So motivational currency is about intentional influence and being able to recognize motivators in yourself, read motivators in others, and then lead and adapt accordingly. And the whole idea is if you have everyone has pretty much everyone has a primary motivator. So the four motivators are performance, people, power, and purpose, based on Dave McClellan's social motives.
Hmm.
And the idea is if I influence or lead based on the other person's primary motivator, as opposed to what is comfortable for me and my motivator, you're going to connect with people better and actually be more influential.
Aha. So just to make sure I'm getting that, so that but you mean leading with your own or trying to tap into what the other person's motivator is?
I'm saying not going with your tendencies and your first
Ah,
instincts. So if
aha.
I'm a very people oriented person and I know that you're all about the numbers and the facts, me talking about the weekend for a half an hour before our meeting starts is not a good approach, right?
Aha, makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Um,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay. So, and you have, you provide presentations on that model or,
Yeah, yeah. So presentations, we have an assessment called the Motivational Currency Calculator, and just created a course on influence and leveraging motivational currency. So it's a self-learned course, which I'm pretty excited to start getting out there.
yes, that was my little opportunity, my hint to you to mention your course. So that
That
was
is
well done.
wonderful. I love very good.
Nicely
Yes.
taken up. Um, so when we look ahead now to the next few years, over the next few years in business and certainly in our society, Um, what do you think we can do to continue to change workplace cultures around
Yeah.
bullying and incivility? Let's start
Yeah.
there.
So I think, like everything, it starts with yourself, which is the hardest part.
Hmm.
And I have some unpopular views around bullying and such. And the first step I always say is look at yourself, and are you in any way unintentionally give a person permission to bully you? Right? Do you uh, always stop giving your point of view? Do you always fall into a place where like that person does stuff to me? And certainly there's times where it has nothing to do with you at all. But the first step is to just take a look at yourself, your behaviors, your mindset, how you show up is critical. And then looking to the future, we need to protect one another. So you want yourself first to be strong, but you've got to look around. And if you're not in a position of power, you've got to build relationships or build relationships with people who know the people in power, because we have to start convincing them that there's a zero tolerance and have a culture of no incivility or no bullying. It should be just as important on a scorecard as your objectives for the year.
Yeah. So these are messages that are important for leadership of organizations to hear and to be able to change the structure and expectations within the organization. But then also, you're saying for individuals to be mindful of finding the power they have, either
Yes,
recognizing what am I doing or not doing that's um, giving this other person an opportunity to behave the way that they are,
yes.
and then and or how can I build relationships with other people in the organization?
Right. Right. You've got to be somewhat self-focused first to make sure you are making yourself stronger. And interestingly enough, a lot of organizations talk about this idea of the what and the how. So the what is the numbers and the metrics, and then the how is the leadership, the civility. And everyone says that. However, it is not till the how is part of compensation and on a scorecard that it actually means something. People treasure what you measure.
Absolutely. No, that's well said. People treasure what you measure. Yes, it reminds me in my doctoral program of my advisor who, no matter what I complained to her about, she would sit patiently with a cat waiting, and then she'd say, "And what part of this is about you?" I always hated that
Right.
question, but now we
Yeah.
get to ask people that question, Rob, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it is an
Exactly.
important one to be asking to get people to think about. So,
Yes.
um, now, is there any question I haven't asked you, or any topic that we haven't covered in the brief time we've had together today that you think is important for us to talk about?
I think a good question is um, how, when you feel like things are at that worst and you can't get out of the bullying situation or the dysfunction, what do you do? And I've always been a fan of Bob Sternberg's work on successful intelligence. And he talks about the environment. I call it fit, fight, or flight. So, fit is if you're in a situation and it's a fit and you've got a good boss, a good organization, great, keep going. Um, and then fight is trying to influence the organization or the person. But the harsh reality is there's going to be situations that you cannot influence and people that you cannot change. And it is not okay for anyone to be suffering on a daily basis, getting stomach aches, headaches, going to work, coming home, feeling miserable. So that's where the flight comes in. It is okay to give up and invite yourself to a different role or a different career.
Um, I think it's so important. I was actually coaching someone yesterday who had been in a role, and we talked about how she ended up leaving the organization, and it wasn't until after she left that she realized how much stress she'd been under in
Sure.
that role,
Yeah.
and how she had been kind of contorting herself like a pretzel to try to
Yeah.
adapt to the leadership, and that it just took too much out of her. But I think sometimes people get into that place of learned helplessness. They feel so disempowered and so depressed. They feel like there is no hope, and that they get very low self-esteem as a result of what's going on.
Yes, exactly. Or, they do exactly what the bully wants, which is they become dominant and combative or completely submissive. And both of those gives more power to the bully. So it's about intentional assertiveness, right? And building alliances as opposed to, because once you're triggered, you lose because the bullies are the best boxers. You don't want to go in the ring with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whether it's alliances within your organization, or I sometimes talk to people about
Yeah,
building alliances like mentors outside your organization who
absolutely.
can be more neutral and they don't have any skin in the game with you, and they may actually be better resources than people, especially in really dysfunctional or toxic environments.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, well, it's sad to say that our time is growing short, Dr. Fazio, but it's been a pleasure to have you. So, what final piece of advice do you have for our thousands and thousands of audience members here? Or maybe just my mom. But no, what would be the piece of advice that you would have for people?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would have is um, start today creating your tomorrow. And what I mean by that is don't just let things happen to you and don't let other people control your narrative and let other people always being the ones that are setting the direction. Make sure you have your outcomes in mind, uh, and put an extra premium on being kind because
Aha.
there is a big strong business case for kindness. It's not just soft. It's actually harder than not being kind.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that thinking about the skills around emotional intelligence and how people underestimate their importance in leadership
It's-
and performance. You know,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We have, whether you are a position of power or not, we all have the power to create a good day for someone else and ourselves.
absolutely, absolutely. So, if viewers want to connect with you after this podcast, how can they do so?
Easiest thing is to go to getonpoint.com. That's where there's a lot of resources, or getbullyproof.com. There's a bunch of quizzes and free resources there as well.
Great. Okay. Well, listen, I'm. It's been such a pleasure to have you, and I feel like I didn't get to ask you like half of the other questions I wanted to ask you. So I hope you'll consider coming back at some point down the road. We'd love to have you.
Well, will there be a different host or will it be you?
Oh no, it will be me as the host, but there'll be
Yes,
even more benefits than there were today, which there were none. So who knows what it'll be? But no, it's
absolutely.
it's been a pleasure.
I always cherish the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
No, great conversation. Thank you so much. So,
All
and I
right.
want to say
Thank
thank
you.
you to the audience members who have been here. It's been a pleasure to have you. So, I want to wish you all continued success in things. And in closing, I invite you to recall the old joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one. But the light bulb has to want to change. Haha. So, when it comes to the tidal wave of rudeness and incivility in our society, what kind of light bulb are you going to be? Until next time, thank you, audience. So, until next time, I'm John O'Brien. And remember, civility matters.